everyone. Thanks for coming. This is pretty much the first panel discussion on polyamory ever here at UVic. And it's hosted by the Poly 101 on Campus group that just started out this year to BDSS. We're really excited to share a personal experience with you and give you a clear image of what polyamory exactly is. Tonight we'll start with a definition on polyamory and explain exactly what the related course case and the Canadian Polyamory Advocacy Association are all about, and introduce our panel and of course answer all your questions. So, just going to start off with a quick definition. The one we've come up and agreed upon tonight is polyamory is a consensual and ethical practice of non-monogamy. This can look many different ways and can include people of all sexual orientations and genders. So pretty broad. So now I'd like to invite Zoe up just to give a brief explanation of what the Canadian Polyamory Advocacy Association is and where we're asking for you to consider donating tonight if you enjoy the panel and want to support this talk.
The Canadian Polyamory Advocacy Association gathered passionate polyamorous and poly-friendly people from across Canada to form an advocacy society earlier this year. Our purpose is to advocate before the court as an intervener or interested party representing polyamorous interests in a historic trial that begins November 22nd in Vancouver. There is a federal law, Section 293 of the Criminal Code of Canada, that specifies a sentence of 5 years in prison for people in both polygamous and any kind of group conjugal situation. Criminalizing polyamorous homes in which more than 2 adults are living together as if they were married, even the law specifies if they are not having sex. The Attorney General of British Columbia attempted to enforce this law with regard to a fundamentalist patriarchal polygynous community called Bountiful, and was unsuccessful. He has requested that the BC Supreme Court rule whether or not Section 293 is consistent with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and if so, under what conditions charges may be laid. The Attorney General of Canada has also joined this case with the intent of proving this law prosecutable. The court has appointed an amicus to coordinate the interested parties who would speak to the matter. CPAA is one of those. The first version of this law was enacted in the 1890s with subclause specifically directed at Mormons. There have been few charges laid under this law and even fewer convictions, but it has been used to assimilate Aboriginal people and limit polygamous immigration. In recent years, there has been much media coverage and social pressure to prosecute alleged abusive behavior at Bountiful, a community of fundamentalist Mormons. This group were first immigrated to Canada in the 1860s and has ties with the FLDS Church of Warren Jeffs in the United States. Its members are polygynous, encouraging celestial marriages of one man to several wives, but forbidding the reverse, and highly patriarchal, with a loyalty to the prophet above all else. In this isolated community, allegations have surfaced of abuse, exploitation of girls, lack of true consent to early sex and marriage, limited and racist education, excess male or lost boys expelled from the community, and abuse of the government social safety net. The RCMP have been investigating these allegations since 1990, but have not prosecuted, reportedly because the community is effectively closed off to outside intervention. Many former inhabitants have testified to authorities and the media about such abuses at Bountiful. In 2009, charges were laid by the BC government against Bountiful leaders Warren Blackmore and James Oler under the polygamy law, but the charges were thrown out due to abusive process. The media coverage of Bountiful has created a context that colors the public's ability to see polyamorous, a completely different population that is collateral damage of the overly broad anti-polygamy law. The CPAA has a mission to distinguish polyamory from the practice of patriarchal polygyny for the court and the media. We seek decriminalization and recognition that there are many relationship configurations criminalized by this law that are not patriarchal polygamy. Groups acting as interested parties to present the position that the law is constitutional are Stop Polygamy in Canada, West Coast Legal Education Action Fund, BC Teachers Federation, Real Women of Canada, Beyond Borders, Ensuring Global Justice for Children, Christian Legal Fellowship, and the Canadian Coalition for the Rights of Children, and David Asper Center for Constitutional Rights. The parties in favor of the law propose that the law is constitutional if interpreted narrowly, so that a conjugal relationship must be sanctioned by an influential authority and must be binding. The claim is made that multiple relationships of two men and one woman and same-sex multiple relationships are not polygamy and not intended to be prohibited by the law, as they are not contributory to the same social harms. The CPAA is among the interested parties that will present the position that the law is unconstitutional and breaches the Charter of Rights, including freedom of conscience, religion, association, and rights to equality, as well as life, liberty, and security of the person, due to the law's vagueness and breadth. Other groups arguing against the law are the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and James Older, the BC Liberties Association, and the Canadian Association for Free Expression. This law is widely considered to be unconstitutional as written. The CPAA is proposing that consensual, egalitarian, polyamorous relationships, including conjugal relationships, are equal in value and dignity to monogamous relationships and should be treated in the same basic way. Government should not be using a Victorian-era criminal morality law to criminalize loving and consensual polyamorous relationships in the 21st century. There is no demonstrated harm and no reasonable anticipation of harm in allowing multiple loving polyamorous conjugal relationships. If it is not criminal to have secret sexual affairs with multiple partners or to have serial marriages, then it should not be criminal to live with more than one conjugal partner honestly and openly. We welcome your support as you remember us during our trial and watch for news of the case as it progresses. Please talk to your MP or MLA and educate them on polyamory, and participate in our website forums so that we can better represent the Canadian polyamory community. We would also be happy to accept donations, for while we run mostly on volunteer labor, we do have costs to produce the lengthy court documents, research literature, and filing fees required to participate in this historic case. Additionally, we will need more lawyer hours beyond that which has been donated, as the court has set aside 40 days for this trial. Thank you.
Thanks, Zoe. So I'm just going to start by introducing our panel participants and giving you a little bit of information on their specialty. So first of all, here we have Quintus. He lives near Seattle, Washington, and has been poly for 13 years with his wife. They have 2 daughters together, ages 10 and 12. Quintus has taken over Polycamp Northwest near Olympia and has grown to be one of the largest polygatherings in the nation. He's extremely involved in his community. He's often sought out as a mentor in the community for relationships, as well as topics relating to raising children in an open poly home. So Zoe, next up, is a director of the Canadian Polyamory Advocacy Association and one of 5 witnesses representing polyamorous families in the upcoming BC Supreme Court case. She lives in an open B relationship and has been a facilitator of Van Isle Poly, a Victoria-based social group and mailing list for 10 years. So then there's Cherish, right next to Zoe. She's a registered professional counselor in private practice here in Victoria. She is also a master practitioner of counseling psychology within the Canadian Professional Counselors Association, with whom she is on the board of directors as representative to the islands. Polyamory has been a key area of specialization within Cherish's practice for many years. As well, she has had personal experience as a polyamorous woman, giving her an insider's view of both the joys and pitfalls of this lifestyle choice. Then on the other side of the box there is Liam, or Captain, as you're probably going to be referring to him. He's a sexologist in private practice in Victoria and San Francisco Bay Area. He specializes in working with folks one-to-one and in groups around transgender and gender variance, sexual enrichment, and non-traditional relationship structures. And he has 4 people in his life that he considers partners of varying degrees. The next captain is Kiki. Kiki is a bisexual, polyamorous writer and educator living in Victoria who has identified as poly for 8 years and has given over a dozen workshops about polyamory in Victoria, Kelowna, and several poly events in the U.S., including Seattle and Austin. Kiki is the facilitator and founder of Victoria Poly 101 and has partners in Victoria, Vancouver, and Seattle. She lives with her 2 teenage daughters and works primarily in the adult education field. And then last but not least is Brad on the end. He's a sex-positive advocate who's lived in Victoria for nearly 20 years. He has identified himself as a practicing polyamorous for over a year now, but has been learning about and participating in sex-positive culture for over 10 years. He is currently involved with a polyamorous woman who lives with her primary partner. He lives with his 2 teenage daughters and works in the IT field. So thanks for coming out today, guys. And now we can get to the juicy stuff, take some questions.
So in Zoe's, you read that the law, and I was just curious. What you said was that even if people were living together and there was no sex involved, they could still be charged under that law.
Yeah, under proof, in the Section 293, Part 2, under proof that you do not have to establish that there was ever an intent even to have a sexual relationship between the parties.
So simply roommates.
Yep.
So the other question then is, has that law ever been used to charge or convict anybody living in either that situation or a polyamorous situation?
As far as I know, it's been used when it's been a male, female, 2 females and a male polygamous situation that they've placed charges. They've only been charged twice. One was an Aboriginal gentleman and the other one was black one.
So how can the law be written to protect polyamorous relationships but prevent the abuse of polygamous relationships, as the example of Bountiful, where it's an unhealthy situation, is my first question. And my next is, presuming that the law is written and polyamorous relationships are recognized underneath the law, is the next step to look for benefits for multiple partners? And how would that look? Like, what's the ultimate goal of the polyamorous community?
Yeah, our goal is just to see it decriminalized. That the law is vague enough that should someone decide they would like to make a statement in our community, that they could charge us and convict us and all that. We just, we don't, having that law hang over your head causes one to stay in the closet, causes one to not experience life as you really want to. It, as a parent, it makes it difficult for me to say to my kids, I don't want you using drugs, I don't want you drinking underage, I don't want you breaking any of those laws, but here I sit in contravention of the law. And it makes it difficult for me to have that kind of honest relationship with my children. It's quality of life thing. The chances of them ever charging any of us is probably fairly slim, but you don't know that. Our viewpoint is that there are already laws in place that, if properly enforced, would take care of these issues. There's laws about how old you have to be to participate in sexual activities. There's laws about child abuse. There's laws about spousal abuse. They're all already in place. This law doesn't say any of that. If they wanted to go out specifically after that, then it should say that. The Attorney General of BC and Canada both have, in their opening statements, they're saying that the law can be read down to include only situations where there's like a child bride issue is there or so on. It can be read down or interpreted. Well, no, it's not. If the words aren't there, it can't. You're not leaving it up to a judge. The judge is not going to interpret. If the words aren't there, the words aren't there. So if they want the law to target that, then they have to rewrite it and put that stuff in it. And no problems with that. I don't agree with any of that either. But our viewpoint is that the laws are already in place that should be addressing that should be part of this. That these abusive situations can occur in any familial configuration. It's not the configuration, not how many people involved that's the issue. It's the personalities involved. Abusive people will find partners.
Right.
And so there's laws in place to protect their partners from that. They just need to be adequately enforced.